Hi, I'm OZ Hall. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. This video picks up where my System 55 Patching for Absolute Beginners video left off. See a link above to that video if you have not watched it yet. In this video, we're going to patch the System 55 based on the example patches in the Behringer Quick Start guide. This will give you an idea of some of the capabilities of the powerful System 55 analog modular synthesizer. As we examine the patches, I'll also point out some of the common patterns of patching that are on display. Learning these patterns will help you understand what's going on with other patches that you might encounter. These patterns view the patch at a higher level than just one patch chord after another. The patterns will also help you create your own patches. Let's take a quick look at the Quick Start guide. The cover of the Quick Start guide shows a patch blank that you can use to record your own patches. You could also take a photo or video of your patch as a record of your work. If you move to page 12, you can see the System 55 Getting Started section. On page 14, the example patches begin. You have the patch itself, then you've got a table of all the patch connections, and finally you've got some verbiage associated to the patch. So that's the Quick Start guide. The first patch from the Quick Start guide that we want to look at is the Space Rock patch. It's actually the second patch of 6, but it starts out with some very fundamental things that we want to hit first. So let's get started. We're going to take the pink noise and plug it into the high pass filter, and we're going to take this high pass filter and route it into our output mixer, and let's listen. And you can see that the high pass filter will cut out that low end material. We're also going to take the low pass filter and add that to our output mixer, and we're going to use it as a sound source by taking the regeneration or emphasis or resonance and turn it up to 9 or 10 so that it oscillates. Next, we're going to use the 921B oscillators as low frequency oscillators. To do that, we want to put them under the control of the oscillator controller, and we're going to patch the frequency out into the frequency link input, and we're going to daisy chain that frequency link from the first 921B to the second 921B. We're going to set this range switch to octave, and we're going to take the master control of frequency and back it down to about 8. To get the 921Bs into low frequency mode, we also want to have the range set to low. Now let's listen to the effect of the 921B on the low pass filter. Now it's sweeping the filter to give us some variation. Let's turn that off. Let's take this second 921B and put it into the low pass filter and then listen to that. So we've got our frequency sweep. Another thing we want to do is take the 921 sine wave output so that we've got 2 modulations on this low pass filter. So let's listen to the 2 of them. And then add in our space noise. And add a little bit more delay. And that's the space rock sound. So to recap, what we've done here is, number 1, created an output mixer for multiple sources within the System 55. and this goes to the mixer through which we're hearing this. Number 2, we're using the oscillator controller and using that as a master frequency controller. And actually, let's listen to that real fast. Turn this up and we can also hear it in the noise. That's pretty subtle, but it's there. That's the space rock sound. Note that I decided to split this video into 2 parts because it was over 30 minutes long. If you like this kind of technical synth video, please like and subscribe. By subscribing and clicking the notification bell, you'll be notified when part 2 of this video is available. Thanks for watching. The next patch we're going to look at is patch number 1, Expressive Lead 1. This is a little bit more complicated patch, and it includes not only oscillators and filters and amplifiers, it also includes a delayed vibrato, and it includes driving the system from an external MIDI keyboard. What we're going to do is kind of take this in pieces. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to route the control voltage out from the CM1A MIDI to CV converter, and that's going to go here to the oscillator control voltage mixer, the CP3A-O, and we're going to take that output from that mixer and route it into the frequency in of the oscillator controller. We're also going to take the S-trigger output and route it into a multiple here, because we're going to have to route that out to the envelopes in a moment. Next, we're going to route this sawtooth output into the output mixer and be sure that we can hear the oscillator. And we're going to take the frequency output from the oscillator driver, route that into the link frequency input, and continue to daisy chain this signal through all 3 VCOs. Then we'll do the same thing with the pulse width output to the pulse width link. And we've replicated the pulse width outputs. And now let's listen to that sawtooth as it tracks the keyboard. We'll patch the sawtooth output from all 3 oscillators into this oscillator signal mixer, and then we'll be ready to route that through a VCA and or a VCF. Then we can take our output from the mixer and route it into the VCF, and next we'll introduce the envelopes to the patch. So we'll take our S trigger and input it into the S trigger in on the envelopes, and we'll take the output of this envelope generator and route it into the control input of this VCA, and the output of this envelope generator and route it into the control of the VCF here. And we'll take the output from this mixer and route it into the control voltage input of the VCF. We'll take the output signal and route it into the signal input of the VCA, and we'll take the output signal from the VCA and route it into our output mixer. And let's turn up the volume. So now we've got a complete voice that's being driven from the MIDI to CV converter. The next step will be to add a delayed vibrato to the whole patch. First, we'll route the S trigger into this trigger delay, and we'll take the output of the trigger delay and route it into the trigger input of this envelope. Then we'll take the output of that envelope and route it to the control input of this envelope generator. Next, we need a signal for the vibrato, so we've got a sine wave from the 921 oscillator. That will be our audio input, and it's actually not audio, it's control, and it'll be a vibrato modulation output that will go into the control voltage mixer, and it'll be under the control of this attenuator. So when we hit a key, it'll get delayed, then it will trigger an envelope with a delay and with a slow attack time that will open up the amplifier and allow the sine wave from the 921 to pass into the mix for the control voltage of the oscillators. Let's listen. And there's your Expressive Lead patch. I think it's worthwhile to review the patterns that we've got going on here. We've got a control voltage switcher mixer that routes all of our control voltages into the oscillator driver, and we're taking the control voltages and daisy chaining them out to the 3 oscillators in the oscillator bank. We're doing the same thing with the pulse width control. That's the master pulse width control. Then we're taking the outputs and routing them into an output mixer for the oscillators, and that goes into the input of the filter, and it gets routed to the amplifier. That's our basic voice controlled by these envelope generators. And in addition to that, we've got this sine wave that we're delaying the amplitude of with this envelope and this delay, and that introduces vibrato after we've pressed a key, and that's a nice pattern in and of itself. So that concludes the Expressive Lead patch number 1. It's a patch that's really got very broad application. You can have all sorts of variations of the pitch, different octaves, different waveforms, different mixes. You could change your modulations as well. So that's it for the Expressive Lead number 1 patch. The next patch is Percussive Lead. It's very similar to the Expressive Lead. This is patch number 5, so again, we're not going in order, but this is so similar to the Expressive Lead in most of the patching that we're going to start with the Expressive Lead setup and move on from there. You can see that the oscillators are very similar. We're going to continue the same oscillator setup. We're using a low-pass filter, a VCA, and 2 envelopes. We'll just target the differences to achieve the sound that we want. And this emphasizes the fact that this Expressive Lead patch is a very helpful standard patch from which to work. So looking at the differences between the Percussive Lead and Expressive Lead number 1, the first thing we'll notice is that we're not using VCO3 at all. The second thing is that VCO1 is using the triangle waveform, and the third thing is that both of these oscillators are in the same octave range. Also, we're not using the delayed vibrato, so we're going to switch that channel off altogether in this CP3A-0 mixer. The final change is to move the 921 sine wave output into channel 3 of the control voltages, and we're going to turn on channel 3. So let's listen to what we've got. There are also some changes to the envelope generator. The attack is 1 second and the decay is rather short, and the sustain is 9, and this is for the filter. Let's listen. So perhaps one of the most important lessons from the percussive lead is the minimal changes from the expressive lead. Also note that the frequency of the LFO can make a difference, and the envelope changes can make a difference in the character of the sound. So that's the end of part 1. We'll have 3 more patches available in part 2 of this series. So please like and subscribe so you'll be notified when part 2 is available. Thanks so much for watching.